What is going on, everybody? It is Ben Morgan of the Fins Up Network. What do you want the Dolphins to do with that pick? Number 13 overall. Dolphins fans, this is the first time we have been picking inside the top 15 since 2021. Since 2021, we took Jalen Waddle, number 6 overall. And as you can tell by the title of this particular video, would you be cool with the Dolphins taking a skill player on the offensive side of the ball? I'm talking running back, a wide receiver, a tight end. Would you be cool with them taking one of those guys at number 13? Because quite honestly, with how disappointing the 2024 season was for the Miami Dolphins, you end up picking within the top 15 for the first time since 2021. This pick is going to get scrutinized, right? And especially if we've got all these other glaring needs, and then we end up getting what some would consider maybe a toy pick at number 13. Yeah, that's going to come with some pressure. And maybe, hey, remember Chris Grier's on the hot seat? Mike McDaniel, his seat's getting a little warm as well. There's a lot surrounding this offseason. There's a lot surrounding the number 13 pick in this draft. So I was curious. I wanted to do a little research of my own in this video today. I put the question out in a post. I believe it was on Sunday. The responses were definitely mixed. So like I said, it's going to get scrutinized by the media, by the team, by the entire NFL, and also by us, right? As fans. Let's look at some of the results that came in. Would not be too thrilled. Unless somehow Tetairoa McMillan falls, I would prefer a trade back if possible. Another thought comes in. I'd be very happy if we got Ashton Jeanty. Well, yes, we will definitely be talking a little bit about the idea of taking a running back here as well. But then you've got another side of it as well. Would not like it because Chris Grier's draft strategy is flawed. In the first round, Grier would draft a wide receiver, tight end, or running back. He'd go secondary in the second, and then he'd go get his offensive lineman in the 7th. Can't trust that guy to address the positions that need the most help. And yeah, both. Absolutely both guard spots. Like I said, there were a lot of responses that came in. I at least wanted you to give a feel about just how different the opinions are going to be out there. And thanks to everyone that responded to that post as well. Definitely want to continue to keep doing that prior to recording and releasing videos. But like I said, I just gave you a quick sample right there. But that's what I want to talk about today. Some pros, some cons, where I ultimately stand on this topic, at least as of today. But like I said, I want to hear from you. Thanks to all of you guys that commented on the post. But if you could comment on this video as well, you're cool with the idea of drafting an offensive skill position player at 13 later in April? Or nah, not going that route? Let me hear your thoughts in the comments. For today's video, I identified the primary options at running back, wide receiver, tight end that are projected to come off the board, at least in the first round, probably that top half of the first round. So I'm not saying the only offensive skill players at 13 are the guys going on your scroll, but for this particular video, these are the guys I'm kind of considering, at least as of right now, in play at number 13. Let's start with that idea, kind of going back to the comment about taking a running back, particularly Ashton Jeanty. You already got Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, Jalen Wright under contract for the 2025 NFL season. Raheem Mostert, we know the book on him. He will be 33 before the NFL draft even hits in April. And there isn't out in his contract. It does result in a $1 million in dead cap. So regardless of your decision on Raheem Mostert, I look at those guys and say adding a running back is likely happening at some point this offseason. And if you do release a guy like Raheem Mostert, it just puts even that much more pressure, that much more priority of adding to the position. Now, if you select a guy like Ashton Jeanty at 13, I just don't envision you taking him as a complementary piece in a backfield. The team, in my opinion, that takes Ashton Jeanty in the first round, they've got bell cow visions for this guy. He just ran for over 2,600 yards on nearly 375 carries last year at Boise State. He is built for a lead back workhorse NFL role. But does Mike McDaniel want somebody like that when he already has a guy like Devon Achane who, served essentially as the lead back in 2024, did a decent job with it, all things considered, on the offensive line. And then guess what? You just got Jalen Wright, who you traded into the 4th round for just a draft ago, just last offseason. Now, one option would be you give a guy like Devon Achane more looks at an actual position, maybe at wide receiver. You used Ashton Jeanty, you used Jalen Wright as your primary running backs. Keep in mind, Devon Achane caught 78 passes last year. 78. Was tied for second on the team with 6 receiving touchdowns as well. I say that saying keep another thing in mind as well. A good percentage of those receptions came with Devon Achane lined up as a running back, not out wide as a typical wide receiver. So we'd have to see how he does, how he can adapt with lining up more outside in that natural wide receiver role compared to being behind the backfield on a regular basis. Regardless, something for you out there to ponder in the event the brain trust, Chris Grier, Mike McDaniel, see a guy like Ashton Jeanty as that can't miss prospect if he is still on the board at number 13. Let's go into the wide receivers. McMillan and Burden were the 2 that I had on my list. In my opinion, the Dolphins probably aren't going to go wide receiver in the 1st round unless they have intentions of what? Trading Tyreek Hill, right? Now, if you do move Tyreek Hill, which if I'm betting on today, I guess I got to say that I just don't quite see happening based on everything that I think that I've been told. Mike McDaniel does not want to get rid of Tyreek Hill. But if you did, let's do the hypothetical. At the position, you're down to Jalen Waddle, the Washingtons, Malik and Taj, Azu Kanma and Tariq Black. Those are your receivers that are on the roster with contracts for 2025. So yeah, wide receiver would 100% be a need at some point this offseason, whether it's the draft or free agency. Now, I say that also saying that the evidence that we have through the first 3 years of Mike McDaniel supports the idea of Mike McDaniel wanting top tier wide receivers to pair along with Tua Tagovailoa in this offense. So in my opinion, if you're in this position, if you get rid of Tyreek Hill, in my opinion, you are between McMillan and Burden if you want to go with the wide receiver at number 13. I'm not going to break these guys down in this particular video. I just don't know that I necessarily see another actual wide receiver going that early in this draft. But if you take a wide receiver at 13, you're essentially selecting one of those guys to eventually become your wide receiver 1. Maybe your wide receiver 1B with a guy like Jalen Waddle. We all know he's pretty good at the position as well. However, I don't think that you are outright selecting your Tyreek Hill replacement. I've talked about this before. Tyreek Hill and his skill set, he's one of one. You don't just simply replace his skill set, in my opinion. And I say this knowing that there's a lot of Dolphins fans right now where Tyreek Hill's maybe not on the top of their list. But in my opinion, at least during my lifetime, Tyreek Hill is the most talented skill player that this team has probably had. If you want to throw Ricky Williams into that conversation, you won't get much of an argument from me. But for my money, Tyreek Hill is probably the most talented skill player this team has ever had. You're not just going to replace him with a receiver at number 13. Instead, what I think you would see from Mike McDaniel of a little bit more of a rebuttal is a little bit more of what we saw this year. It's a more balanced approach at the position where the ball is constantly getting spread around more to the wide receivers, to the tight ends, to the running backs as well. A little bit more of what we saw in 2024 versus 2023, where it was what? The Tyreek Hill show with Jalen Waddle sprinkled in, right? So I think that you would see not a new guy to funnel the ball to more, but just another piece, another skill player that you can add to that complement. All right, let's transition into the tight end. We'll end there. If you go Tyler Warren at number 13. Now obviously we got the breakout season from the position that we've all been wanting for this last season, obviously, in the form of Jonnu Smith. So the question about whether or not Mike McDaniel can successfully incorporate a tight end into the pass game, he checked the box. He did it, right? Now, Jonnu Smith, under contract for one more season. However, he will be 30 this season as well, and it's not like we're littered with talent behind him, at least from a pass catching perspective, right? We all know what the likes of Julian Hill and Durham Smythe and all those guys bring to the table. It leaves you wanting more. So the need to add to the position is likely there, but the question will be, as we're talking about in this video, is just number 13 overall just simply too early to be selecting a tight end? Now, the season that Tyler Warren had at Penn State, it'll scream at you, no, 13 is not too early. But with other, I'm gonna call them more pressing needs, then one could argue, yeah, 13 maybe is a little bit too early to be drafting a tight end. But this particular decision is potentially a situation that the Miami Dolphins could find themselves in, where they've got to decide a couple of it's this versus this. It's taking a solid prospect at a position you truly need to address versus taking your stud player, playmaker that one could argue is the best player available on the board in the first round. Because not only do I think a guy like Tyler Warren can step in, contribute, maybe not like a Brock Bowers by any means. He's kind of a little bit of an anomaly, but he could step into a pass catching role alongside a guy like Jonnu Smith already from day one. But he also has the physical makeup to become, in my opinion, at least, an all-around complete tight end. We're talking about, the pass catching, which he can do, what he can do after the catch, being a reliable blocker in the run game, in the pass game for years to come. Once a guy like, Jonnu Smith, when his time is up with the Miami Dolphins. So the bottom line with all of these guys, whether it's the running back, the wide receiver, the tight end, all of these guys we talked about, is where does the Miami Dolphins front office have these guys ranked on their big board? And then, like we said, whether or not they're willing to stray from that board at all to get a certain position of need instead of going outright best player available. In my opinion, whenever I talk about draft and strategy, I tend to rant a little bit. So my apologies to begin with if I end up going on a rant. Best player available draft strategy, in my opinion, is the way to go. If you start drafting for need, if you do this every year, and if you start doing it in the first round, and guess what? First round draft picks are not guaranteed things. If you start drafting for need, well, guess what? We draft for need in the offensive lineman. He gets hurt, or if he doesn't end up panning out, and we start doing that again now in the 2026 draft, let's say that guy doesn't pan out, you got to do it again in the 27 draft. You've just depleted yourself of outright talent that's going to be able to help this team for years to come with those early picks. So like I said, I'm trying not to rant here on that, but the idea, what I kind of like, is the hybrid best player available and then selecting some positions of need. That's my preferred method. And where I kind of stand with that hybrid is, in certain situations, the guy that's maybe at top of your big board overall just doesn't make sense to take. So in that situation, drop a player or two. That's fine. Or if you're in a situation where, let's say you don't need a quarterback, you've got a quarterback that's at top of your big board right now, there's probably a team out there that wants him. Go ahead and trade, and you can do that. So even in this hybrid best player available / selecting player of needs model, what we'll call it, the best player available should be weighed more heavily into that decision versus just whatever position a prospect may play. So I say that rant, saying that my answer to this particular debate is that I want the Miami Dolphins to stay true to their board. Don't feel forced to take an offensive lineman or another glaring position of need over what could end up being a skill player that you might end up having ranked higher. However, hybrid, right? Off-season hybrid model right here. If we go this route at number 13 in the first round of the draft, you sure as hell better address those glaring positions of need before the draft in free agency. If you can do that, if you can add some quality offensive linemen, and I agree with the commenter from earlier, not just one guard, maybe not just two guards, a couple of guards, some tackles. If you thoroughly address the offensive linemen, if you get some new players into the secondary already in free agency, free things up for what this team can have the options of doing at number 13, then you can truly go with the best player available. So there's my answer to my own question for this video. But like I said, it's not just a thing that you're going to do in the draft. You got to check off some boxes in free agency before you really have that luxury of going best player available at number 13. But like I said, that's just my opinion. I got a lot of opinions from the post we put out earlier on Sunday, but I also want to hear from you. If you're checking out this video, go ahead and drop your thoughts in the comments. We will end it there for today, Miami Dolphins fans. But until next time, fins up.